I never believed in aliens. Not seriously. Not the ones with spacecrafts or glowing eyes. My life was simple. Cold mornings, lifting weights in my cabin, chopping wood like some forgotten myth in a world that never looked up anymore. I didn't ask for anything extraordinary. And then she walked in. A woman with sapphire-toned skin, eyes like twin galaxies, and a crimson veil laced with symbols not found on any earthly cloth. She stood barefoot in the snow, and didn't flinch. I froze mid-step, axe still in hand, as her lips curled, not in fear, but in confidence. That smirk? It was the beginning. "I've chosen you," she said, head tilted, voice like silk wrapped in thunder. "To make a human child with me. No context. No explanation. Just that. Something in me should have run. But I didn't. Because deep down it didn't feel insane. It felt inevitable. And that was the first moment I realized. She wasn't here to invade Earth. She was here for me. My name is Julian Hunter. I live alone, deep inside Milligan's Pass, hidden far from civilization. After losing both my parents in the hospital chaos of 37, I built this place to escape people, noise, systems. Off-grid. Off-record. A man with no past and no plans. Then Hazel arrived. Not in a spaceship. Not in a flash of light. She didn't crash through the sky. She stepped into my world like she belonged, as if this frozen forest was hers long before I claimed it. I remember the day. It was snowing lightly, the kind that hangs in the air like breaths waiting to be spoken. I came back from the river with a basket of fish, walked through the front door of my cabin, and she was there, standing by the fire I never lit. Tall. Serene. Dressed in crimson embroidered with what I can only describe as living thread, patterns that shifted gently as if breathing. Her eyes found mine, searching, analyzing, judging. And then slowly she smiled. No human hesitation. Just sharp certainty. "I am Hazel of Illyria." "Of where?" I asked, my hand instinctively reaching behind me for the axe. Her head tilted. "Another star. Far from this one. You were selected years ago." Pause. "Selected for what?" "To begin a new lineage. Human Illyrian hybrid. There's harmony in your blood." At first, I thought it was a nightmare met halfway. The kind that feels too detailed to be fake, but too crazy to be real. But everything she said matched records I didn't know existed. My journals. Childhood medical scans. A burn mark on my lower back I always thought was a spilled cigarette. She knew things no one should. I tried to throw her out. I'd never even let a woman sleep over without panic rising in my chest, let alone one wrapped in glowing silk claiming intergalactic rights to my DNA. But she didn't budge. She followed me, hiked beside me to the ridge, asked strange questions about weather systems and water molecules, and at night she sat curled in the corner of the cabin, silently staring into the flames, whispering to someone I couldn't see. I started writing it all down. Every word, every glance. She never blinked twice, never flinched when I screamed, never backed off when I demanded answers. Finally, one night, I shouted, "Why me?" She stepped close, inches away. Her body radiated warmth like soft fire. She pressed 2 fingers lightly against my chest. Because in 1,000 samples, one pattern returned again and again. "You." I didn't understand what it meant. Still don't. But I couldn't deny it anymore. She wasn't insane. She wasn't pretending. Hazel was something else entirely. Something ancient and terrifyingly real. There was no abduction. No probing. No metallic laboratory. Just 2 strangers locked in a house during the longest winter I can remember, one of them human, the other not quite. And every time I asked if she was serious about making a child, she'd just smirk again. That same damn smirk. Truth is, by then, she already had me. And I think she knew it. When Hazel said, "I've chosen you," she didn't blink. She didn't smile the way humans do when they're flirting. It was official, spoken like royal decree mixed with cosmic certainty. Then she turned, walked past me, and made herself at home in my cabin like she'd owned the land since time began. I didn't sleep that first night. Instead, I watched her from the shadows. She sat cross-legged on the living room floor, still as a glacier, eyes closed, lips moving silently. A soft blue light pulsed beneath the skin of her neck, almost like breath or something alive living beneath it. Her hands were folded, her fingers twitching ever so slightly, as if she was typing on invisible keys. She didn't speak to me. Not yet. I think she was waiting, to see if I would run, or if I'd open my mouth and finally accept the madness. But I didn't run. I couldn't. Not because I trusted her, but because something about Hazel felt like she'd cracked the gate to a locked vault I never knew was inside me. Something ancient. Something terrified. The next morning, she was awake before the sun, already dressed in different colors, shimmering silver trimmed with deep ocean blue. She stood barefoot outside in the snow, arms raised toward the sky, her face calm and blank as the wind swirled around her like it was listening. I stood on the porch, voice groggy, mind looping from lack of sleep. You know you're not really blending in. She opened her eyes slowly, as if she'd just left one universe and arrived back in mine. Blending serves no purpose. The ones who hide are prey. Remarks like that? She dropped them constantly. Every answer felt like code, like I was being tested. And maybe I was. Hazel explained her people weren't conquerors, nor were they wanderers. Illyrians, as she called them, were born in an energy-rich system thousands of light-years from Earth. However, her generation, the Crown Seekers, had one purpose: to carry forward ancient bloodlines through selected human hosts with specific genome frequencies. It sounded like sci-fi garbage. But then she showed me proof. She pulled a sphere from her chest. Small, obsidian black, warm to touch. The moment I touched it, the sphere expanded, floating midair. Holographs, or something beyond that, appeared. Not images. Memories. Real ones. Galaxies bending over mirrored oceans. Cities suspended in mist. Illyria wasn't a planet like Earth. It was layered. Dimensional. Evolving every second, alive like a living organism. She said I'd been marked during a cosmic pulse event when I was 9. A solar breath, she called it, one that inverted transmissions across space, opening dormant genes in certain humans. Out of 8.6 billion, she explained. 12 survived the test. Only one was compatible at full sequence. Me. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I'd grown up thinking I was unlucky, average, forgettable. And now I was a chosen father? To a hybrid child? Worse, Hazel didn't ask permission. She didn't even act like it was a debate. You will accept, she said during breakfast, casually poking at scrambled eggs like they'd offended her. But I'll give you time to adapt. 14 Earth rotations. 2 weeks. Those 2 weeks were the strangest of my life. Hazel consumed books at impossible speed, walked barefoot across ice with zero discomfort, and meditated in snowfall like it was a warm bath. She never ate meat, but she'd drink hot water with shredded pine bark and call it life infusion. She claimed Illyrians could only survive on worlds where trees still remembered their names. She spoke very little about her past. But one night, while sipping tea near the fireplace, she opened up, just a little. I was born second-born daughter, bred through ritual known as the selection flame. My sister was first. She died during convergence. Convergence? I asked. Her eyes didn't move from the fire. When Illyrian and human DNA synchronize, most fail. Some perish. You hold balance. She looked at me then, and for the first time I didn't feel like a test subject. I felt like something sacred. Something needed. I won't lie, I hated her sometimes. She invaded my space, rearranged things constantly, claimed my dog, Charlie, was an evolved snow guardian, not a pet. Once, I caught her staring into the mirror, repeating phrases over and over like she was practicing how to be me. Yet, every time she walked into a room, the air shifted. like the world itself adjusted to accommodate her presence. Her presence silenced the noise in my head I'd lived with since I was a kid. I'd never known quiet until she arrived. And then came the ritual. 4 days before her deadline, she told me we'd begin the bonding phase. Naturally, I protested. She simply raised her hand and I blacked out. When I woke, I was lying in a circle of hand-carved stones, each shimmering with symbols carved in glowing ink. Hazel held a blade, glass-thin, sapphire-colored, and she pressed it against her palm, letting one drop of violet blood fall into the snow. Then, she looked at me. "I ask not for submission," she said. "I ask for presence. Do not run. Stand with me. If you choose no, the core will close and my mission ends." The core? I didn't know what it was then. But I stood up, heart hammering, mind numb, feet frozen, and I said one word. Yes. There were no lights, no sect, no dramatic climax, just a single flash of heat between our palms when she touched me again. And in that moment my vision split. I saw Illyria. I saw her memories. And I saw our child. Not born yet. Not real. But waiting, like a star that hadn't lit up yet. Hazel never smiled like a human. Except that night. That night she did. And everything inside me collapsed into something terrifying. Hope. There's a silence that comes just before something breaks. Around day 20, that silence followed Hazel everywhere. She no longer smirked when I joked. She stopped rearranging things in the cabin. The air around her felt heavier, charged like the seconds before a storm rolls over the trees. Her eyes remained alert, constantly flicking to shadows in corners, even when nothing was there. She started sleeping with her fingers resting against the stone she called the core. Every night, her lips moved in patterns too complex to be simple prayers. She never told me what she was saying. But it didn't sound like requests. It sounded like farewells. I wanted to believe it was nerve. Maybe the bond had rattled something spiritual in her. But deep down, I knew better. Something was coming. The first sign arrived in the form of noise, an unnatural hum spreading through the land like an echo buried underground. It wasn't loud, but it was everywhere. The birds stopped singing on the third morning. Then the foxes stopped passing by the tree line. Then the satellites above us started falling. One burned through the atmosphere at 1:22 a.m., a sleek piece of black metal that shouldn't have been over this part of the continent. It slammed into the lake 2 miles from my cabin, igniting the shoreline in blue flame. The impact didn't shake the earth, but it rattled Hazel. She stood perfectly still on the porch, eyes wide, breath slow. "They found us," she whispered. "Who?" I asked, stepping out into the freezing air behind her. "The Earth-world factions. The ones hidden in shadow. Their sensors picked up the core when it synced with you." I blinked. "You mean the government?" She shook her head slowly. "Governments are puppets. These are the ones who erase governments." Later that night, we sat by the window and watched flames flicker across the lake through a pair of old binoculars. Hazel finally spoke. "There's no part of your world untouched by watchers. But there are few places they cannot reach without revealing themselves. Here in your frozen silence we were safe. Until the core reacted." She leaned back against the window and lowered her head. "Once the life seed initiated, your body became a beacon. A transmitter. Your blood now sings. Life seed." Her silence answered everything. Over the next few days I noticed changes. I couldn't explain it any other way. I was getting stronger. Faster. My senses sharpened. My dreams became lucid and terrifying. Images of remote labs, silhouettes of men in lead coats, rituals under foreign stars. I stopped being just a man and started becoming something else. But the price of transformation was paranoia. I heard voices in the trees that didn't belong. Felt pressure in the air when nothing moved. Hazel became more protective. She began drawing intricate symbols across the cabin walls, using crushed crystals smeared with her own blood. The walls pulsed faintly once it dried. "These symbols are gates," she explained. "They twist attention. Those with ill intent will lose focus if they approach. But even the gates couldn't protect us from what came next. It was nearly midnight. Snow was falling thick. I heard it before I saw it, a low screech, mechanical and deeply wrong, like metal remembering it used to be alive. I looked out the window, and there it was. A drone. Black as obsidian, with 6 rotating lenses and limbs like folding knives. It hovered just above the treetops, scanning in waves. Not military. Not commercial. Nothing built by a country. This came from the off-record world Hazel warned me about. I turned to shout for her, only to find her already backing toward the door, her eyes narrowed. "They're listening now," she whispered. "We don't have much time." I grabbed my cabin rifle, the one I hadn't touched in years, and followed her outside. She raised both palms. A thin veil of shimmering air flickered between us and the drone. For a second it hesitated. Then it screamed louder. Then it vanished. One blink, and it was gone. Like it had never been there. Hazel collapsed into the snow. I carried her inside, heart pounding, sweat mixing with flakes on my forehead. She was shaking, skin returning to its human-like tone, only this time it looked pale. Folded in layers of something heavier than exhaustion. "This world is dying," she murmured. "Not from war, not from time. From silence. Too many truths buried in metal." Then she looked right at me. "If I die before the passage completes, you must return the core to Illyria. Our child cannot survive Earth's rejection alone." "No. No one's dying," I snapped. "We're not even halfway." She smiled faintly. "Growth accelerated. The bond is deeper than we predicted. Life inside is forming quickly, like it wants to be born." She paused, reaching toward me, fingers trembling. "You must listen carefully now. That night, she told me about the real war. The one Earth never knew it was part of. Her people left Illyria long ago to prevent cosmic collapse. They found Earth because it was the only planet whose species carried traces of Illyrian ancestry, remnants left behind after the first descent, when beings from her world seeded the galaxies with hope. But over time, Earth's rulers grew paranoid. A hidden alliance formed to keep knowledge of Illyrians erased. Stories became myth. Myths became jokes. Still they searched. They waited. And 37 years ago, during the solar convergence, they found 12 potential hosts. Of them, only one survived the subtle implant, me. Now, factions hunted us. Not just for Hazel, but for what she carried inside her. She called it the Starborn. Part Illyrian, part human. A being of light concealed in blood. A child whose birth could rewrite human evolution, or doom it. We didn't speak much after that. I spent the next 2 days preparing. Stockpiling supplies, sealing windows, planning escape routes into the higher passes. Hazel rested more now, her strength fading. Her skin dimmed, her voice grew gentler, softer, less like foreign stone and more like trembling wind. And even still, every time I sat beside her, she gripped my hand firmly. "I'm not afraid," she whispered. "But they are. There's more than one kind of war. The loud ones spill on screens and street. But others, they whisper. They crawl behind curtain and fog, through wires and satellites, under temples of steel and silence. The quiet wars are the ones that leave no smoke, only memory." And Hazel knew this war had already begun. I always thought love was a choice. Something you stepped into after time, trust, and comfort. But Hazel showed me it was none of those things. It wasn't patient or soft or simple. Love, with her, was elemental, like fire learning how to feel. And it came for me when I had every reason to run. For the first time since Hazel arrived, she couldn't walk. The glow beneath her skin had dimmed to a vague shimmer, as if someone had turned down the volume of her soul. Her breath was shallow. Her hands, usually charged with energy, trembled when she tried to push herself upright. The change wasn't just physical. It was something deeper, like a current pulling her back to the stars, and she was fighting it with what little strength she still had left. "I didn't expect to feel this much," she whispered, forehead against my chest. Not for this world. Not for you. The walls she built so carefully cracked in that moment. I realized then, Hazel wasn't fearless. She was just good at pretending to be. I asked her what she needed. Not food, not rest. Not medicine. Touch, she told me, voice a heatless wind. Not for desire. For grounding. If you tether me, I may hold on long enough for the child to anchor. No elaborate ritual this time. No glowing symbols or stormlight skies. Just two broken beings sprawled across an old wooden floor in a one-room cabin far beyond anyone's reach. I held her. No words. Nothing between us but breath. And for the first time in days, she stopped shaking. That night, she opened herself fully to me. Not just her mind, her memory. No words could explain what I saw. Illyria wasn't a planet. It was a pattern, living energy formed into shape and sound. Her people didn't name their gods because they didn't worship them. They were them, fragments of celestial intention trying to hold form across infinite timelines. Hazel had once loved someone, a scientist, another seeker like her. He had sacrificed himself during a failed convergence trial. But before dying, he encoded parts of his conscience into Hazel's core. And she carried his voice like a scar. Pain is memory trapped in the body, she whispered faintly. And you are the first silence I've ever trusted. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Not with words. So I pressed my forehead to hers and tried to pour everything I had into that singular moment. And maybe she did the same, because suddenly I could feel our bond. It sat beneath language, two pulses narrowing into one. I saw the child again. Not clearly, not yet. But enough. A heartbeat that didn't belong to either of us. A rhythm between worlds. It wasn't science anymore. It was destiny. By morning, we had a choice to make. Stay and fight or run. Hazel told me the core was close to activation. Once it fully pulsed, there would be no hiding what we were creating. Every faction, every sensor, every system built to detect abnormal energy signatures would lock onto our position. I can slow them down, she said. But only if you're willing to buy time. Buy it how? She hesitated. Her hands dropped to reveal something she'd hidden since she arrived, a shard of crystal grafted from Illyrian ore. Tether it to yourself, she said softly. If I burn out, you become the safe point. The child finds you first. I stared at it, cold, jagged. It pulsed faintly in sync with my chest, as if it already recognized me. This will kill me, won't it? No, she said. But it will change you forever. In another life, I think I would have said no. Buried the fear. Taken my dog. Hiked into the mountains and never looked back. But shifting in my hands, I didn't see a weapon. I saw a future. One built not from war or science, but from something far riskier. Trust. I said yes once, I told her. I won't take it back now. And I pressed the crystal shard into my palm. It pierced my skin, blood mixing with light. And just like that, I became more than Julian Hunter. I became an echo of something bigger, stronger, alien and human together. After that night, our connection grew impossible to describe in earthly terms. When Hazel slept, I could see stars, not above us, but within her. Maps of systems I'd never visit, but somehow already knew. She dreamed in equations. I dreamed in instinct. We no longer spoke in full sentences. We didn't need to. 2 days later, they arrived. Not ships, not soldiers, but cold. A thick cloud cover spread across the forest too fast to be natural. Temperature dropped 20 degrees in minute. The snow stopped falling, and just hovered midair like time had been tampered with. Hive weavers, Hazel said. Mechanics of entropy. They twist physical laws. They've begun altering the space around us, reprogramming what reality allows. I didn't ask how she knew. I just gripped her hand. Then we take back what's real. In the hours that followed, the cabin became a sanctuary and a stronghold. We moved together, her magic, my intuition, reinforcing sacred geometry along the baseboards, igniting barrier wards made from my own blood mixed with hers. She taught me to sync my breath with the core, raising shields that bent light and silenced trans-frequency broadcasts. They couldn't see us anymore, but they were still looking. We only had so long. Before she went into her restorative rest, a trance that would keep her stable through the critical phase, Hazel spoke again. Julian, this child will carry pain, vision, truth, so much more than either of us. They will need you after I'm gone. Gone where? But she didn't answer right away. Instead, she stroked my face, slower than ever before. I wasn't meant to stay, Julian. Just to shape the future through you. Tears came, but I swallowed them. Because when you love something that doesn't belong to this world, you learn what it means to be brave without promises. I stayed awake that night watching her breathe. One hand on her core, one hand on her womb. And I knew one thing with terrifying certainty. This wasn't just about aliens or miracles. This was about choice. She had chosen me. Now I would choose what came next. Snow fell in absolute silence, as if the world held its breath, waiting for something ancient to awaken. Hazel lay still. Her body pulsed faintly beneath the veil of cloth and woven symbols. The core glowed beside her, humming louder by the hour, like a heart inside a world not yet born. And under her palm I could feel it, a heartbeat that did not belong to her or me. Ours. I hadn't slept in 2 days. My eyes remained fixed out the window, watching for shadows that defied physics. They'd come closer now. We hadn't seen them, but the world spoke of their presence in broken patterns. Crows circling in eights, frozen air despite the fire burning hot, trees leaning west against the wind. Hazel told me they were called the Voidborn. Not invaders. Not soldiers. Sentences in a much larger language, older than human memory. Illyrian lore claimed they were the correctors, meant to erase anomalies that shouldn't exist. Like Hazel. Like our child. Like me. The core flared suddenly at midday on the 14th day. Hazel awoke mid-contraction, eyes wide with pain and wonder at once. Her voice was calm, but her hands clenched with intensity. "It's time," she whispered. "The bridge between worlds has opened." I wanted to panic, but somewhere deep inside, the bond kept me grounded. Hazel had said our child would arrive not like humans do, but through a process of energy and blood, a becoming more than a birth. She gripped my hand harder than ever before. "I will pass through soon," she said. "But not before the child arrives. You must guide it. Speak to it. If they sense fear, they won't hold their shape." I tried to ask what that meant, but the skies answered for me. The clouds cracked open, without thunder, without lightning. A beam of ultramarine energy shot directly into the clearing, splitting trees in silence. And descending through that column of impossible light were figures, tall, winged, glowing from the inside like dancing fireflies trapped in crystal skin. Illyrians. The real ones. I stepped between them and Hazel's prone form without a second thought. "You're not taking her." "No," the tallest among them responded. "We're here for the child." Hazel's voice cut through their glow like a blade. "They will not be taken. If the line continues, it continues on Earth, under his guardianship." The leader tilted his head. "He's immortal." "No longer," Hazel breathed. "He burned the shard." All 6 Illyrians lowered their heads in silent agreement. Not submission, recognition. And then they knelt. I could hardly breathe. The process began just after sunset. The core's energy shifted colors in violent patterns. Violet, gold, white, blue. Feeding directly into Hazel's chest, then into the center of her abdomen, where the child pulsed brighter with each minute. There was no womb as we'd understand it. No cord. No cry. Instead, between 2 hearts, hers and mine, space tore gently. And from it stepped light. Wrapped in a fluid mist of energy and breath, a small figure emerged. Not an infant. Not a skin-wrapped creature. but the idea of one. A form of pure intention, flickering between matter and meaning. And they looked at me first. Not with eyes. With awareness. Are you ready? The thought didn't need to be spoken aloud. It landed inside my mind like a memory I had always carried. I didn't answer. I just held out my arms and stepped forward. The form brightened, then dimmed, then settled, and where once stood cosmic potential now rested a trembling, breathing child. Flesh, bone, soul, mine, ours. Hazel collapsed backward. Her glow faded one final time. I caught her before she hit the floor. She smiled. Not like a queen. Not like a warrior. Like a woman in love. I knew you'd hold on, she whispered. The Illyrians stepped forward again, but instead of reaching for her, they formed a circle. One of them sang, if something so haunting and beautiful could be called that. A morning chant? A blessing? I looked into Hazel's eyes and asked the only question I hadn't dared yet. Will you survive this? She kissed my forehead and spoke into my skin. I was never meant to stay. She began to freeze. Slowly. Not painfully. Not tragically. Her body crystallized from her hands outward, glass-like, clear, shining in the fading daylight. Her lips parted one last time, releasing a final whisper. I carry you in every star I pass. And then she was gone. Not dead. Not broken. Just ascended. Returned. Dissolved into the energy that had always made her more than mortal. Our child stirred in my arms, solid now. Breathing. Watching. The Illyrians lowered their heads. One stepped forward, his face far older than the others. This child carries the potential to unite fate across intelligence, the voice of both bloodlines. What was separated begins again now. And what happens to us? You raise them. Alone. The being's smile was not cruel. Just distant. Never truly alone. That night, I stood outside with my child in a sling wrapped across my chest, watching the stars part as quiet fire rained from above. Hazel was up there, somewhere. I could feel her. Not just as memory, but as presence. A soft nudge in my chest when I breathed too fast. A flicker in the core every time the baby laughed in its sleep. Her legacy pulsed in every moment I had strength enough to keep going. We left the cabin days after. The forest was no longer safe. The whispers kept returning. Some governments did come. Quietly. They made offers. They made threats. But I knew better now. I was no longer afraid of the unknown. Because I had held it. And it had smiled back. Some nights, I dream of Hazel's face pressed to mine, her hand resting over ours, whispering stardust lullabies I can never fully remember when I wake up. But I remember what mattered. Julian Hunter died up there in the mountains. What came down was a father, a guardian, a carrier of something holy. And somewhere out there, under stars I no longer fear. She watches still, waiting for the day when her child becomes the light that saves us all.